Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be breaking down the exact steps of how to go from a loop to starting your arrangement. We'll be continuing with the music idea from Friday's stream. If you missed that one, no worries. I'll do a quick recap before we dive in. So join me as we work through these essential steps to get our loop ready for arranging. As always, feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we'll learn and discover new things together. My goal, same in 2025 as it was in 2024. It's to help you level up your skills and become a better music producer. So without further ado, let's dive in. Let's start by having a little recap of what went on in Friday's stream. So I threw a bit of a surprise in there, and I'm thinking to do this more often. Would love your feedback on that, which is just where I decided to, in an afternoon where I had a bit of free time, to make a new music idea. And so I just jumped into a fairly impromptu Friday live stream, put a little note on my Instagram and in the YouTube community. So if you're ever wanting to find out when those impromptu streams might be happening, you can follow me at Heath Home Music on Instagram, or you can check out the community tab of my YouTube channel, and I'll put the announcements in both those locations if I'm going to jump on and do a bit of a stream. Anyway, this was what I ended up with in part one on Friday's stream, which was the loop, the music idea that I came up with in that time. Xavi Diaz, muy buenas tardes, good afternoon to you, my friends. Hope you're very well. Feliz Año Nuevo. Happy New Year to you. And to others of you, if you are joining the stream, do feel free to say hello in the chat. It's not only questions, it's nice to know where you're tuned in and listening from. And yeah, let us know a bit about yourself or say hello. Don't be shy. All right. So that was a little listen, a recap of what happened in part one. So often when I'm working with other artists or listening to other people asking questions about electronic music, let's say we're all working at Ableton Live and we're starting off our ideas, when do we know when is a track ready to start arranging? When is the signal that says, okay, that you've got an idea now and it's ready to take it to the arrangement? I think there's no, the truthful answer to that and honest answer is there is no magic formula. It's something you develop, like a lot of things in the journey as a music producer. You just develop this skill of understanding at some point when you've got a good music idea and when it kind of ticks the boxes that you feel it needs to tick. Now, one thing that I think is super important is how, like, the things that you can help as far as a strategy goes to make your life a bit easier are some things that are going on in this project here. And that is, first of all, set yourself up with the idea that you're writing the drop first, or the peak of the track, the max energy section. That's going to help a lot because often the song idea or the arrangement or the structure of the track is going to be building up and breaking down that peak energy loop or peak idea. So I'd always stress, I think in all the years of doing it, that seems to make the most sense to me, that you work at the very peak of the track and then work your way left and right from that into less scenes. If we're going to make more scenes here in the session view, we're going to make scenes with lower energy, maybe higher energy. Unlikely if we make our first scene the highest energy, but we might do a breakdown scene, we might do a first verse scene, we might do early on in the track a bridge section, depending on the language you speak there. We can go into that another day. Some variations of this loop. So currently we've got this loop. And as I wrote the track, this is something that I can also help you with as a tip and a strategy. Try to already put in the bank options for exactly what I was speaking about, scenes, changes. So if you're writing a bass line, don't be afraid to have other MIDI clip variations of this bass line already copied below. So we're going to take a look in a moment at all these individual tracks and sort of see where we can develop those. And there are things in the bank here, like this vocal ended up being what's currently playing the loop. This section here, which essentially, if you're interested how I made that, by the way, you should definitely check out part 1, because it's a kind of vocal that ended up being in a sampler with a bunch of effects going on, and then I recorded and rendered it to audio, and this is the audio recording of the vocal. What's beautiful about that is I rendered it out for, 16 bars here, and we've got different variations, as you can see in this clip here. So straight away in the bank, I've looped up this particular section here. That's what we're hearing at the moment, but we've got other vocal snips that we can go back and loop those up and use those as variations down here in other scenes. Similarly, the chord track, we currently have this MIDI. It's not really a chord, so we're going to work on that in a moment. The bendy FX, that's also just a single note. We'll have a listen to that in a moment. And then we've got our sequence over here, which currently hasn't been printed either to audio, or we do have some MIDI variations of it down here where we did print some sequences as we went along. So we can fall back on those. That's sequences that we tried out that are not lost. They're down here. So all of these things that are sort of lower down here, they're kind of like, in the bank, copied down there deliberately. Same with the bass line. There was an idea I had early on. I haven't thrown it in the bin. It's down here. Maybe we use that. Let's see. So just to point that out, percussion similarly. I did exactly the same thing, almost as the vocal. I recorded out a long take of a randomized sequence that was going on with some percussion, and I've looped up my favorite section here. However, we've got all of the rest of that MIDI, which is in clip 2, and we can go and do another loop like I've done there, and we've now got a variation. Also, be good with your housekeeping. Number things, color them, so you know that that clip is different to the other one. Don't just copy it down there and then we don't have a clue what it is. This one here, for example, well, we could write in there and just say that was the original bass sequence. Probably got to use that one, but again, it's kind of clear what it is, right? The bendy FX, tried out a bit of a chord idea on it. It's copied down there. I still haven't put anything in the bin. Also over here, we've got things that didn't make the cut so far, but they still went through all the effort of making the sound from 0. So maybe we'll end up using them. Similarly, here is the track that I used to make the vocal. So if I decided to make a change, I can go back. It's all there. It's just switched off, right? So these are all things that I think will make your life a lot easier. So what have we got on our list to do then? Exactly that. Let's try and come up with some other scenes so that we can kind of make more progress here. And we've also got to do something else, which is currently on the drum track over on the left here, or beats. We just have this stripped audio loop of a kick, a clap, and some hi-hats. The reason I've done that, again, I've sort of shown that maybe a few times in some other live streams. I quite like to often write my tracks where I'm focusing more on things that are what I would say the wow parts of the track, or the main thing that says it's a good music idea, such as the sequence and the vocals and the chords. Kind of concentrate on writing those things often. I mean, I'll flip the script and I'll leave the drums and things like that till actually at the end. So instead of doing drums and bass first, I do melody, chords, vocals, different ideas to kind of get a feeling for what the song is, and then I'll do the drums actually at the end. Good idea with that, as I said, is to flip it. Don't always do the same thing each time. Flip your approach. One day do the kick and the bass and build up from there, and another day do the melody and the vocals and build from there. So we've got to make well, you don't have to. I think if you're a beginner, there's nothing wrong with using this stripped drum beat loop here as your drums, but I'd like to kind of compose some drums now to go with this, where I've got a kick and a clap and some hi-hats and all that kind of thing. So let's keep it for a second. I'm going to make our own drums in a moment, and let's have a look at coming down a bit here. So let's say we insert a new scene below the one we have. And let's say with the chord track, let's maybe start with that. We're going to duplicate it down. And I'm now thinking about maybe in this scene, I'll make it, we could go over to scene 2 and we could actually just say break. Right, so maybe I'll make this like the main break of the track, and I'm just going to do something with the chord track for that particular part of the track. So let's have maybe the percussion copied down, so we've got something to go with it for a moment. We can turn the sequence off for a sec. And all the sounds you hear in this are made from scratch. So if you're curious again to how this chord track, what is the synth sound, it's in video 1, part 1, where I go through everything. It's made from zero, this track. So how I sound design the meld, how the percussion is made, that's also a sequence playing a drum rack. So all these sounds are made from scratch. So let's work on these chords a bit. So let's make an actual emotional chord, because right now, what happens on this track, it's more of a drone or a pad. It's not really got much emotion to that. So let's turn on scale. We're in B minor, by the way. And let's turn this first one into a triad. So when I speak about emotion, we'll check this out in a moment. We'll do an A-B comparison. But when you don't have thirds or a triad, you just have 2 notes. Technically, it's a chord. Technically, it's a harmony, right? It's 2 notes playing at the same time, but there's no emotion to it when you do this, and it's on purpose. I did this on purpose, the very first version of this particular track. The clip, it's done with just the 2 notes, just to give us a very neutral sounding, this meld synthesizer, this pad chord kind of sound, but now we can put some emotion into it, and that will give us that variation from early in the track to switching over to this in the main break. So we bring some feeling into the track. So I think it's a good idea, right? So it was stripped, and now we're kind of turning it into a proper chord. And when we add the thirds, or turn it into triad, we get a third somewhere in the chord, and that's going to give us the emotion. So this note here is now giving us the emotion in this first chord. So even just moving that A down there, I think that makes that chord a little bit more interesting than it was, but if we put it back up, let's do that. And let's copy that down. And this is sort of something I think a lot of people struggle with, so hopefully it's helpful to see the process. As I said, we're going to get to arrangement at some point today, but these are sort of steps where we're already, as I said, evolving our loop of what we had. And these are sort of things that I think a lot of people perhaps aren't sure how to go about it and come up with variations. So that's kind of what we're doing at the moment here, flushing out some ideas, right? So 2 being with the note on top, and 3 being down, let's say. All right, so now if we just jump between what we had, a very original one, let's also give that another color. Listen for the emotion that I'm speaking about, the change from a very neutral chord, because it's not really a chord, it just scrapes in terms of us calling it a chord. It's technically not really. So you can really feel and hear a difference there. And another trick you could do with that, in this case, I've just built the scale and built the notes I had into triads. We could also make them into 4th chords. We could change the rhythm here. Lots of options, but another idea you can have is looking at the chord type. So if we were to take off the scale here, let's look at this particular clip. And if we turn off scale, we can kind of have a look at the intervals between the thirds, right? So this one here is a minor chord, this is a minor chord, and this one here is a major chord. So you could, in your break, which is this chords are going to happen in the breakdown, we could sort of, let's say, turn often a good trick is to go from minor to major, things like that. So maybe you look at, if we had lots of major chords here, we might turn them into minor, or we might go the other way around. That can be a really nice emotional change from your track, that you're going along through lots of minor chords through your track, and then suddenly in the main break you hit us with some nice major chords. Here we've just gone from very neutral sounding clip on this track to something with a bit more feeling. I think that's nice for the break, right? Because it means we can build some tension there. Shara Huggins, Happy New Year. Very Happy New Year to you, and thanks for dropping a comment. Hope you're enjoying the stream so far. We're kind of working on a part 2 here where we're flushing out a bit of a loop into an idea that we're going to try and get into the arrangement today. So on this chord track now, we've got a couple of things in the bank again to play with. Similarly, with the percussion track, let's have a listen to track 2 as maybe the breakdown percussion, which is literally just the same sequence of percussion and the same 2 sounds that I recorded out into a take of the sequences. And this is currently the loop section that's playing 1. That was my favorite loop through that sequence. And here's 2. Yeah, so maybe we have 2 in the break. So all we're going to do is just move a couple of things around a bit here. Just move that up. 2 we can bring down. So I like that so far as the idea of my break, right? The bendy FX, let's drop that down into this breakdown scene and see what that sounds like. Does it have a roll in there? Could be nice. Maybe what we could do in the case of the bendy FX is give ourselves a little bit of another color on this clip, and we could try something else out. It's B2, so it's quite low. I was thinking maybe to do an even lower note. What about if we try extending this note a bit further on the bendy FX? Or ideas are coming here. Right, so maybe I take this as like a cascading sort of. That could be really, really nice at the end of the drop, right? And then in with the fireworks. So just an idea there, right? So how we've now got another version of that we could use. So I'm just going to put a little note in there, end of break perhaps. So I think that could kind of be cool. I might use the other just single bendy FX along the way, and then that clip comes in right at the end of the break, but I think it works quite well. So what else have we got? We're not currently got any of our drum groove in this scene that we're building here. We also have the sequence muted. So let's put the sequence in for a second. So what we might do right away, because I think in the end with the sequence at the moment, we've got some different sequences down here that I printed So again, if you're curious to how all this has come about, then you need to check out part 1. There'll definitely be a link to that at the end of the video description. You need to check out part 1, and all these techniques, all these sounds are made from scratch in that particular production session from Friday. And you can check out how we got to here. What we're doing here is evolving it, right, into loop going towards the arrangement. So a couple of sequence ideas were printed down here, but we don't, I think, have the current sequence. So let's make sure we capture that. So let's go over here, make just a simple MIDI track that's blank, and we're going to get it to listen to the lead sequence. And we've also got a spare lead sequence. We're going to put that over here. I'll explain that in a moment. We might do something with that in a second. All that is the same track with a completely different synth sound. So I tried drift at one point, and then in the end, I kind of put analog and made an acid sort of sounding patch on this track, which is what you're currently hearing. So let's print some of the sequence. It's coming into here in the track. We don't need to hear it. Hit record. So when you're messing around with sequencing and things like this, it's a good idea because you're safeguarding that sequence, right? So we've now got our main sequence, and that I think really is the main one. That's the one I want to kind of like really preserve, because once I've done that, I can now go to the sequencer itself, which is what I'm thinking to do here. And I'm going to essentially, I'll explain what I'm doing before I do it. I'm going to leave the pitch, the sequence pitch change that I've got going on, same with the length, same with the velocity. I'm going to leave those alone. Octave wise, we don't have any sequence on the octave because that was not really sounding like something I wanted. The second page, we've got stuff going on as well, by the way, and do make sure you check that out in this Ableton SQ sequencer that comes with 12 in the pack section. It's such a great device. I'm really in love with would be a fair word. It's going to be in a lot of my tracks, that's for sure. This pack called sequences, there's 3 great sequences that come in there, and this is one of them, right? So do make sure you get that if you're working in 12 Suite. So on the second page of the sequencer, we've got things like time shift, ratchet, and condition. So there's some very cool things there. Anyway, I'm going to leave pretty much all that alone, and what I'm going to do is up here where you've got the 8 steps. So here are the steps that are playing, right? The ones that are yellow, highlighted yellow, those are the steps that are active. So if we come back here, you can see 1 is not active, 6 and 8 aren't active, but 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and 7 are active. So if we hit play, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to roll the dice on this and see if I can come up with another sequence without changing, as I said, what I want to preserve. So that could be cool for somewhere like here in the break. So again, all we need to do, we've got our track, I've left it all armed and set up, is we can print these all day long, you know. Nice. So what I was looking for, I didn't probably say what was going on in my head, but again, I was actually looking for something like that where it was not as busy a pattern. So I was looking for something, in this case, on the sequencer, it's only got 3 steps. So I was kind of looking for something where I didn't have as many steps happening. There was also a sequence a little bit further back that was really good for maybe even up another gear, but we can print some more later if we wish. So I'm now going to name this one, let's just say 2 for now. And what I might do is basically, let's try sort of muting a lot of it and just see what it sounds like just with the very bare minimum. And in fact, most of this is, well, there's a bit of variation in there, but it's fairly similar, I think, right across. So we really only need kind of 1 bar of this, let's say, looped. And what we need to do, just made a mistake there, but it should be fairly audible, is once we print these sequences, we then go over to the track and we turn off the sequencer, right? Because otherwise we're putting a sequence on top of the sequence, which can sound fun, by the way, if you're doing some sound design, but we now are going to use that MIDI instead of the SQ sequencer. Just gonna have a sip of my tea. All right. Do feel free to say hello if you're here in the stream with me, and also drop any questions in the chat if there's anything you wish to have broken down or understand. If I went too fast or you have a question for me, feel free. So we might modify it a little bit. Nice. So that kind of has just given us a whole, again, another clip in the bank in our second scene that we've got going on here at the moment. So let's maybe try the vocal now. Do we want a little bit of the vocal in this break? Let's go to the original and leave clip 1 in the main peak scene. And I'm going to try a different loop. What happens if I reverse this clip as well? That could actually be quite sweet. I kind of liked it also both. So maybe what we'll do is we'll make a couple of those. So we'll leave the original down here. This is the thing, that's in the bank. We're not going to destroy that, but we're going to bring up a copy of that. And we've got this one looped like so. So what we might do already with this one is right click in the looped area here, and we're going to crop that. Okay, because what I'd also like to do is make it a bit longer than 2 bars. So we've got a little bit of kind of, it's looping around in 4 bars rather than just the 2. And then let's do a copy of that. So let's get some coloring going on here as well. Let's call this now the number 2. And then number 2, we're going to duplicate down, and I'm going to flip that. I'm going to reverse that one. And that could be a nice, again, end of break, perhaps, you know, or something else. So again, all these sounds were made in stream 1 from scratch, and we've got lots of options here. We could also turn this into, I think, a really cool kind of FX or Atmos in the back as well. Could work really well. So what have we got now on our break scene? See, I really like that. So I'm actually drawn to that being in there. We'll put some delay on the end of it so it kind of reverses up and then kind of kicks on nicely, because I think there is delay on that track, or no, because I printed it to audio. so we can add a nice delay to that comes in when that sweeps up there. So that's kind of cool. I'd also, while I've got the vocal here, I want to try something else with this. Let's get another copy of it. And to be honest, this could work with any of these, even clip one. It doesn't really matter. But what I want to do is a very small loop. Just going to turn off a couple of these other tracks so you can kind of hear this. This is a really fun thing to do with audio, right? Because you can do this with any sample, and it particularly works really nicely on voices. And obviously, you know, if we had a clip here of sort of some chords or a melodic sequence or something, you can try a really small loop, as small as you can make it, and then move it around in the sample and just see if we can come up with a really nice, like either a little textury loop or a little loop that could be turned into the atmosphere in the back of the track, or a kind of rhythmical kind of loop that's going on in the track. So let's kind of get rid of a few sounds just so we can hear what's going on here. We could also make it a bit longer. Okay, so we're in beats. So what we could try with this as well, while it's in beats, is to change the beats mode a bit. And what we're doing is using beats mode to kind of come up with this little rhythmical kind of sound, right? So lots of possibilities. It can end up being quite a cool little sound that we could use, right, in the bottom of the track. And the other option we've got here, if we're doing something like this, is to also, instead of using the beats mode here, we could also try something like texture and use the grain size and flux. But for that, we really kind of want to maybe speed things up a lot and then resample it. Obviously it sounds funny with everything else, but yeah, we might do that another time. So I don't think that's what I'll do in this session, as it's just going to slow us down with going too sound designy. But you know, I just had the momentary thought that it could be nice to use one of these vocal clips to have a little piece like this up our sleeve. So we might keep this one, and what we might do is kind of turn that into its whole own track over here, and think about, as I said, using it as a kind of little atmosphere. So now you kind of hear it. Let's get an EQ on it. So it's a little bonus piece. We didn't need it, but I just wanted to show you. It just came across my mind as I was sort of messing around there with the vocal, coming up with my variation from what I had originally, and the clip I'd chosen, the original take we have here of all the different vocal takes. And I just thought, well, sometimes I do that. I make a little atmosphere from looping something. And again, that's actually from the track, right? It's coming out of something within the track. So in terms of tying into the song, it works really, really well. It's made from within the track, and it can be EQ'd, repitched, stretched, lots and lots of fun stuff that we could do with that, but it could add a nice little bit of a rhythmical layer. Anyway, let's get back to our second scene. So I'm pretty happy with that scene as a break scene. So I'm going to kind of roll with that for now. And if we also copy this Atmo into there, so that's our transition right now, right? Here in the session view. So let's maybe copy down our peak scene. So we're going to duplicate our scene number 1, our peak. We might just label that in a moment as well, so that we kind of are aware that that's our peak. So peak's still sitting up in number 1 slot. Let's try and come up with another little section here. It's kind of like a verse 1 or a variation of the peak loop, because I'd like to tackle the bass line. We don't have a variation of that at the moment. And so what does the bass line sound like? Let's have a few things together. So with the bass line, let's have a look. It's a nice kind of rolling bass, mainly on the B, and that's it. So we could try a couple of things here with the secondary clip, making a variation of the bass. Let's try it up an octave. Well, that's already a nice 2. Duplicate that down. Let's try another variation. Let's legato the notes, make them a bit longer. So let's try this in the second scene then, if we hit stop for a second on everything. So in our verse scene over here. We're currently trying out the bass up an octave. Let's try the legato bass. A little bit muddy because it kind of perhaps blends into everything a little bit too much at this point in time, so probably won't use that. I like the octave up. We could really, again, hopefully this is just kind of opening some doors. Let me know if you're finding this useful and helpful, just so you can see kind of the thinking and how we can kind of evolve the parts that we have quite simply here. I'm not doing anything too, crazy sound design wise or anything wild at this point in time. I mean, the Atmos track was a bit more kind of, creative, spontaneous, in the moment type thing, but these other things are fairly straightforward kind of changes that we can help us move between the sections of our track, right? So let's maybe try for another version of the peak, but this time I'm looking for actually something a bit more dramatic, like that I could use in the sense of a bridge. So if I sort of say, let's have V1, the verses, or that could even just be verses. Let's call it just verses for now. We might make a verse 1 and a verse 2, but we're just coming up with a few different scenes here. This one, let's say we make it a bridge scene. So we might not use that until later in the track. So what I'd like to try here, I could try another sequence, flipping the sequence and getting another sequence going. We're currently using these two that we've printed. We could try actually one of these ones. See what that one sounds like when we jump. Not quite right for my ear. So I think we need to come up with another sequence here. We don't need to, but I think it would be a good idea. So let's pop our sequencer on. Let's just restart the clock. So I'm just opening the filter on the synth there. There's lots of fun stuff we can do yet with automation, etc. I think the one that's rolling around now isn't bad. And all I'm doing, again, I sort of spoke about it a moment ago when we printed these ones, I'm kind of preserving all of the pitch and the velocity and length, because we could flip those as well. We could roll the dice on those again and change those. I'm kind of keeping all of that, and I'm just changing the number of steps we have involved in the sequence itself, and it's kind of giving me lots of kind of interesting patterns here. So again, we're set up over here to grab those sequences. So let's again now print this new sequence that we might use in the bridge section of the track. Happy days. Okay, just name that number 3. Let's pop back in here, turn our sequencer off for a second. And maybe something fun to try with this one is to loop it in a bit of a polymeter way. So what's the difference? So I've kind of changed the loop length, right? So if we copy this down so we can have a comparison. We loop it at 2 bars. Sounds like that. So we get that unusual rhythms that are going on a bit, because it's going to take a while till it resets. And we could even go all sorts of it. I like that. So we've got a little bit of a polymeter going on there, so we can kind of add that into the mix. So not only is it a new sequence, it's a polymeter sequence as well, so it kind of flips up the rhythm. So again, we're going to, in the bridge, maybe hit people with that. So we've got our main sequence going on, we've got a breakdown sequence, we've got a bridge sequence, we've got a couple of different chord variations, we've got an emotional one for the main break. Vocal, we've got some different parts going on, excuse me, and some variations of that. So maybe we could also hit them with the second vocal in here. And I quite like this second bass line down here. So what I'm going to do is swap these basses around actually, because I think I feel like 2 is more a peak and up an octave, and we might have the other bass, which was originally the number 1, we might have that actually in the verses. Yeah, I'm enjoying the tension in that break scene. So one last thing I want to try here, I'm going to duplicate the chord track over, and I'm going to try a whole new sound with clip 3. Which is the actual chords, the actual triads, and we can basically get rid of all the other clips for a moment. Let's just see if we can have another sort of loose cannon, something that could be used in the mix if we wish, turn those chords into an ARP. I think we'll start with a fresh synth sound. We'll switch off the processing here, and let's see, maybe we'll have a wavetable in here. Let's get our arpeggio. So I could end up going down a bit of a rabbit hole there, but that could be something that we could use, right? It's just taking, again, something that was already in the track that I'd written over here, the chords, and having this kind of arpeggiating those. Could even sort of print a bit of that. I think what I'll do is I'll end up just putting an envelope on this instead. So let's say with the ARP track just for a second, let's print a bit of it. What we can actually do. So this is a good thing, by the way. Here's a little tip as we're going along here. It can often be good to set yourself up a little track as you go and just call it rec in, and essentially it's just an empty, in this case, we're printing MIDI sequences today a bit from some of the different tracks. So in this case, it's grabbing MIDI in, but you can also do it with an audio track. And then all you need to do is literally you can change the routing of the in and outs, particularly the in, whatever's coming into it. And you can leave that in the track, generally place it somewhere out of the way a bit. It's an auxiliary track. And then you can just kind of route things into that and record that, in this case, the MIDI of it. And it's there whenever you need it. So let's grab that arpeggio's MIDI a bit. Oh, I think we had a crash, ladies and gents. That's a bit unfortunate. Just hang in there for... Well, when we get that reopened, we're going to definitely do a bit of a save ASAP. Just bear with me for a second. That's what happens sometimes in a live environment. Things can crash. So I know you're staring at a black screen with a rebooting of Ableton, but yeah, these things can happen. So can you hear my voice? If someone's there in the live stream, please let me know that the microphone is still working fine. That would be helpful. Let's do a quick save live set so we don't get anything, because that was a bit of a strange one. I haven't had that happen for a while. So yes, a bit of a strange reasoning. I have no idea why. So let's say this is actually part 2. Danny B, Happy New Year, love and peace to you. Can you hear my microphone okay? Could you give me a thumbs up or something on that one? That would be super helpful. So save live set as Jan 3 music idea part 2. Let's save that into that folder. Yes, you can hear the mic. That's good. Probably won't hear the music for a second though, so we'll fix that in a moment. We'll check that as well. So we've done that. Let's do a collect all and save while we're at it. Always good reminders. Had a friend message me during the week that had his hard drive go bananas and almost lost all of his work. So lesson always for us, ladies and gents: save, backup, do all those good fun things, and make sure that you don't lose the good work that you are doing. So did I lose something? Yes, I think I lost my arpeggio that I recorded, but that's fine. We can do that again in a second, hopefully not crashing things. So let's just check again on the audio now of Ableton. I'm guessing no. So let's have a look at that. We'll need to fix that when it crashes out. So we need to jump here and we need to just do a very quick switch. And hopefully now we're back in business. If someone again can just give me a thumbs up that we have audio of Ableton now, that would be super useful. Danny B, my biggest fear, disc going bad. Yeah, I mean, you know, you never know what happens. I'm still a old school hard disk backup. But obviously a lot of people use cloud storage systems as well, which are kind of great in this modern day. But yeah, if something goes wrong there, everything's in the cloud and you can't retrieve it. That's also pretty frightening, I think. So if someone can let me know they can hear that, I shall resume. Perfect. Thanks a lot, Chavi Diaz. Appreciate that. So let's just see about recording the ARP again, and hopefully we don't get a crash. I will try and do what I was going to do. Fingers crossed. Okay, so it doesn't like that at all. Very strange. So yeah, took a risk there. Backfired. Okay, so I won't be doing what I was thinking to do. Very strange. There must be something unusual there. Basically, what I wanted to do was tweak the arpeggio in real time whilst it was being recorded, but it doesn't seem to like that for some particular reason. So I won't do that from now on, as we're obviously I'm crashing the software while I'm trying to do that. So strange. Last time I had those issues, it was definitely my end, and it was to do actually with the streaming software, not with Ableton itself. So quick restoration of the audio, and then we'll be back in business, and I won't do that. It's not necessary anyway. It's not a life changer what I was trying to do. Okay, so sorry folks, let's just test the audio. In theory, we're back in business, so I'm just going to record the ARP. Joining late streaming, Adrian Dantas, Happy New Year to you, my friends. We've just had a couple of crashes actually while I've been playing with the arpeggio recording here. So now I'm just going to conventionally record it, not play around with it. Right, so now we have an arpeggio track from over here, the MIDI printed, let's say. So in theory, we shouldn't get any nasty crashes in theory from what I was trying to do, but a bit strange. Normally in real time, we can go down to here and adjust the arpeggio in real time whilst you're printing the MIDI. I'm not sure what's causing the crash. So obviously, as you can tell, twice, what do we say? 2 times it happens, twice shy, once bitten, something like that. Obviously, if it keeps on happening, there's no point me trying to do it. So now I do have the ARP recording somewhere here, down here. Reason why I wanted that was also as I was thinking to sort of use a little bit of that rather than the whole sort of sequence. So again, I might just go in here, find a little section of it. And sometimes in these little gaps where the sequence changes, we can get something really nice like that. Sorry, wrong track. So rather than letting that was the method that I was trying to do. So rather than just being sort of lazy, it's not lazy, but just having the chords and just arpeggiating them and saying job done, I've kind of printed them, and then I'm able to go into this take of the random arpeggio sequence that was going on. So what was the factors involved? We had converge and diverge as the ARP, we had 16th notes, we had our wavetable synth, but what was going on here, I was going to tweak it in real time, but in the end, this is what was being repeated, this pattern. We can see it kind of here, repeating every 4 bars, and then it starts again. But what you can do then is go into the printed MIDI and think a bit different, get creative again, find a little section of it, loop it up. And what I'd quite like to do is, let's have that down for a second. Let's go into here. Quite like this little sequence that we've got. We're going to click on the top up here to highlight that area. We're going to right click and crop it, turn it into its own little clip here. And then I'm going to extend this actually out perhaps. But actually, I've made a mistake there, so I'm going to go backwards because I've broken one of my own rules here. And that is that what we should really do is preserve that clip, right? And call it the original down here, especially after the door crashing twice. Thank you, Chavi Diaz, for letting me know the sound's on, by the way. Appreciate that. So, not breaking my own rules, I want to make a copy before I crop it, right? Which would mean I would have access to go back to that at any point in time. And now I can crop it, and now I could kind of like, I was thinking to make this a longer sequence and then just have this little bit play every now and then. Interesting. Yeah, it's strange, doesn't like my cropped clip, doesn't really matter. I'll delete that and I'll just make a copy of this up here. And I'll move my chords down, which I was using to make this. Now recorded it, now stripped it into something. So let's have a play of the bridge scene. So I'm just going to organize things a little bit now so this all kind of makes sense, and then we're going to get over into the arrangement view and start laying this out a little bit, and I'll walk you through. Actually, we also need to come up with some drums, but that shouldn't take me too long, so let's do that as well. And we don't want drums in the breakdown, so in that scene, so we're going to mute the drum clip that we're using at the moment. So let's just do a bit of a tidy up. Beats we're going to work on in a second. Bass line, we've got our variations in the right, matching the right scenes. Percussion also. Vocal also, yes. Chord pad idea, yes. And the lead sequence, yes. Let's kind of give that the same color. So we've got our variations going on there, and now we've got the arpeggio. Let's get that into a different color so it's not too confusing. And this is not the original, it's now a little, let's say, main, or I think I'll call it the motive. So it's a little motive that I've taken out of there. The bendy effects, we've got the different clips in the right place, and this atmospheric loop. Just trying to remind myself what might be the difference there. Nothing. So we will just remove that and put this up here. So I've ended up composing a couple of extra parts. I've also got stuff going on over here that I haven't used, but in the end, the main thing, we've got two most important scenes here, I think, are the peak and the bridge. So this was the main. Let's jump from the main peak to the break. Let's bounce from that to a verse. And then let's jump to the bridge. So material to work with. We've now got meat on the bone. We've got material to work with here. So let's get stuck in to some more clips and sort of work our way along here. Just having a quick look. Maybe someone, it looks like we're frozen perhaps. Someone could let me know in the live stream. Are we still good, or are we currently kind of frozen? Maybe someone could just let me know that, as one of my computers is sort of suggesting that we're frozen here. So just punched into the chat there. If someone could just confirm that. I believe that we are, but yeah, just to make sure. It could be just my other computer is, yeah, strange. Kind of lost the stream on one computer, not sure why. So thanks, Chavi Diaz, again. Appreciate you being there and letting me know. That's good to know. All right, so happy days. Let's crack on then. So basically, I've got my 4 different scenes. Let's do a little bit of work over here now and just make a basic drum kit. So we're going to have a kick. We're going to have clap or snare, something along those lines, and some hi-hats as well. So let's maybe have closed hi-hats pattern. And we're going to go for perhaps an open, I think, on this track, which will be great for the peak. And we can kind of check that with one of these other drum loops. So if we are here, we jump to this one, I think it is. So I think that would be nice. So we might actually start there with the open hi-hat, and we're just going to plug in some MIDI. So a nice offbeat open hi-hat. Just going to rebalance my screen. Bit of a fun one today. Obviously, the new year kicking in. Maybe the software had a bit of Ableton had a bit too many beverages over New Year's, I'm not sure, but haven't had a crash for a while, but these things happen in real time. So we're going to look for a 909 open. tone's quite nice. Just have a quick check. Let's also, on the one that I chose, so 9092, this one, let's actually also turn on the little sound, similar sound selection, just in case. No, I think that one will do for now. Let's get some velocity into it. I'm going to work quite quickly on these drums, so if you've got any questions, do let me know, but I'm going to get my drum kit rolling quite quickly. Okay, let's find a nice punchy kick for this. I'll clear that. Okay. I like the sound of this kick. Let's just have a quick look at the kick alongside the bass, just so we can see if there is any room for some sort of ghost kicks. Do they make sense? Do it make sense to have a little interplay between the bass? There's quite a lot of interplay already. There would be a bit of a space here for a ghost kick. So let's put the kick into focus. So we could have a ghost kick there, could add some nice conversation between these two parts. Similarly, we could have an extra little kick there. We're bringing down the velocity on those so they're nice and low. So if we solo these two parts, what we could also try and do, maybe pitch those down a little bit. they have a little bit of variation, so they're not only like a ghost kick interacting with the bass, but they kind of pitch down a little bit, so it just gives us a little bit more vibe. So just checking what we've got so far on the percussion side. So let's maybe now do a closed hi-hat, and I'm thinking what we'll do there is a bit of a layered closed hi-hat. So I'll show you what I'm thinking there. If you've got any questions about what I'm doing here, hit me up. With the drums, as I said, I'm just moving quite swiftly there. I'm replacing this loop that I used in part one just to get myself rolling, which was just simply a kick, clap and some hi-hats, right? So I've been using that since the very beginning of this idea. In part one on Friday when I live streamed, I used that drum groove and this one as well, just to get a vibe. But as you can hear, they're what's called a strip drum loop. They were just an audio loop, a placeholder essentially, just to give me, instead of a metronome, a nice bit of vibe from just some drums, whilst I built everything else you've been listening to. And now I'm just replacing those with my own sounds. That means I can kind of bring these in and out in the arrangement, adjust the MIDI, adjust the samples, the ADSR of the samples, layer them, process them. Here I'm trapped a bit, right? Yes, I can do things in audio and I can cut these up and re-slice them and pitch them up and down and do fun stuff. I could slice this loop up and put it in a drum rack and replay it, but they were there just as a placeholder. Now I'm just kind of flushing out a bit of my own kind of drum kit, let's say. So with the closed hi-hat, and I'm kind of adding little fills, little ghost fills here and there, checking, which I just did before, did the kick with some fills kind of make sense alongside the bass? Was it kind of interacting with that in a good way? All of this can be tweaked, right? It's because I'm composing it from zero in the case of these drums, they could be highly adjusted. So for now, it's just sort of getting something kind of rolling. Closed hi-hat, the idea I've got there, I've built lots of racks over the years. I'm just going to look for one that has lots of closed hi-hats in it on the pads, which is this rack down here. And it's full of kind of like, we'll see in a moment when we put in some MIDI here. Or is it? Ah, that's the selector rack, not the one I was thinking of, actually. That would work. This one here is the one I was thinking of. 2021, I put that together. It's quite some time ago, but essentially it's got lots and lots of closed hi-hats throughout the rack, some favorite samples. By the way, if you are here in the live stream and you've stuck with those couple of crashes, big thanks to you guys. I hope you guys and girls, I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're finding it beneficial. We're going to try and get over into the arrangement page in a second, but this was today more about taking the idea to our session one and flushing it out, showing you what I was thinking, how I make these different scenes, so that when I get into the arrangement view, I've got a plan, I've got things in the bank, I've got ways that I can build my tension and release and start putting my song together. It'll come together. You know, I won't be scratching my head over in the arrangement view thinking, well, why didn't I make that open hi-hat pattern before, and why didn't I do this? So I'm going to be kind of pretty sure that when I move from here to the arrangement view, I've got the working parts, the fundamental ones, and some extras that we may or may not use in the bank, ready to rumble when I get over into there. So with a closed hi-hat, we could try a 16th note pattern where we go for a fast closed hi-hat. Let's randomize the velocity down here so we've got some vibe happening. So we might just do an A-B test, and we'll have that one also with offbeats, but a little bit of a different sort of offbeat. So we've got a little bit of variation in it. And we'll just see, do we want a 16th hi-hat, or do we want sort of an offbeat with a couple of sort of fills around it? And what we might do again, that kind of thinking experiment right then helped me out, because it's just given me two clips, right? So that we can have a 16th hi-hat in the peak, and we could use that closed hi-hat pattern number 2 now in the bridge or in the verse. Lovely. That's the kind of sort of areas where all this kind of thinking starts to pay off, right? So nice. So what I'm going to do, let's take the offbeat, 16th on the offbeat, and let's move them. Let's turn off a few things so we can hear what's going on here. Also have that off for now. Quite like that. Let's maybe take the ones that are on the 1, the downbeats. You got a nice kind of groovy little loop like that, where we've now got some variations in the hi-hats as well, different samples, right? Yes, 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 David, it's sweet indeed. It's kind of a technique I use a lot. So we get a different loop to what we might normally get, right? If we just put things in as we do every time. Get some groove in as well by changing the length of the notes a little bit. Maybe a bit too much on these. Nice. So what we need to do, because I've put all that work in there, is we're going to copy that down and we're going to turn that into essentially what we had here in 2, right? Which is just reminding myself what we have there. So we've got just one of the offbeats, right? And then we've got that group of 3. So it's kind of like that, that, that. And then what did I do in the second section? Yeah, just the 2 hi-hats on the end here. A little bit of a feel like that. So let's try that out. That could be number 2. By the way, I'm still nervous after that crash. Whenever you've had a crash and you've even had 2, I'm still a bit nervous. I'm tiptoeing gently around the software here. And we've now even got a third pattern, right? Because we've got 1 just sitting on that very first hi-hat, 2 is a variation of 1, and 3, another variation. So I think what I'll do with this is I'll make all the hi-hats the same length. We need to turn this track off now, number 1, that's finished with. I'll bring that way over to here in a moment. Have a listen to how this is starting to sound with everything else. So I think that hi-hat up the top here is a bit too strong. Go back to this for a second. Maybe that one. Quite like the little pause there. Gives a nice little kind of feel. Let's jump to the break scene. Yeah, this clip here could be also, if we want a bit of hi-hat in the break, we could do that. All right. Just filling in where I need to fill in the drums. So I think we'll have 2, we won't use 3 if we want the sequence in the bridge with the ARP. All right, so now we're cooking, moving along here at a good pace. Let's get a clap in. Let's do that. Again, it could be a snare, but feeling a bit of a clap could be the way to go here. So let's search out a nice clap. We might go actually to our good friends, or my good friends at PML, by the way. Shout out to Production Music Live. They do some great samples, as well as contributed to lots of great content online. So jump into one of their packs, see if we can find a kind of want more organic sort of sounding clap. So this one sound like. Pretty groovy. Let's get a bit of velocity change, just a little bit. Can also try these, humanizing these a bit. Let's get them a little bit. We go in front of the grid a bit. We get a nice pushing, sort of driving feeling. Can also try this one a little in front. Nice. And let's do a quick little tidy up on those, just getting a little low cuts EQ on the bottom of those. Let's clear that, jump into an EQ or two. And let's just cut away any low end we don't need, just so we can make sure the kick and the bass and everything works together. Just as a guide for now, that's not the final EQ settings, by the way, it's just to get something in place. Let's copy that over to the hi-hats as well. I'm EQing all the hi-hats together here as well. Maybe later in the mixing stage I'll come and do every single hi-hat as it's a multi-layered hi-hat pattern, right? Or in this clip it's not. If we go up to one, we're actually EQing them all together. That will do for now. Just check the pitch on all of these. Maybe pitching down the clap a little bit sounds nice. Just adjusting all the volume envelopes of the drum sounds, getting them to sort of gel nicely in there. Just try over all these hats together as well, maybe a little bit of erosion. Nice. Just a bit of extra character. All right, that's how they sound without the erosion. So the erosion's kind of giving them some nice character. And we can pull that down quite low if we just want it really subtle. The wide noise, all the noise, depending on where you want them to sit in the mix a bit. Wide for me, for sure. Somewhere there on the frequency. Yes, Chavidiers, erosion does make the magic. It's a great little device to add some crunch and character to things, and shakers, hi-hats, lots of kind of things where you might want a bit of crunch. I mean, the difference on this hat group of sounds, quite a lot, right? They sound very dry and kind of, you know, that kind of seems to glue them together nicely and add this kind of overall global kind of crunch. Quite a big difference. In a good way, I feel. Try a little bit on our 909s as well. But that already has its kind of vintage vibe to it. So we're not getting so much impact there. All right, let's crack on a bit here. And let's check our scenes now. So we've got a basic drum kit. We've moved away from the audio loop that kind of kick-started everything. Let's pull that right down. And given that we've had a couple of crashes today, we are going to throw in a bit of a save. As I said, I'm still feeling nervous after that. Takes a while to recover from those things, particularly in a live stream. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying the stream so far, and you're learning some things as we've gone. We're really kind of flushing out the idea, preparing it to go into the arrangement view. We're going to have 20 minutes or so of today's couple of hours stream over in the arrangement view, and there'll be a part 3, of course. This is an idea that I'm going to take all the way to, I believe, a mixed and finished project, so stick with it if you're enjoying what you've seen so far. Well, yeah, stay tuned for part 3 next Sunday. So let's save that. It's going in the right location. Yes, that's a good news. We're going to replace that. And we're going to collect all and save. So we've got our samples that we're using in these tracks now included. Let's switch on everything we've got left to right. Let's check our peak loop. Technically, we should reorder these a bit, actually. The verses would come before the peak, and now I'm kind of happy with that. There's going to be an intro and outro scene, so we could carry on building scenes here, but I'm kind of hopefully, mostly I've done this to sort of show you kind of what I would do in here with my idea from part 1, and how I'd sort of evolve it a bit here, how I'm putting things in the bank, how I'm making changes to what I started with. That's what today's been really about, showing you just some tips and tricks about variations, printing MIDI, getting stuck in, taking an audio loop away that was a placeholder, and all those good things. And now we've got 4 scenes that can kind of take us from the different parts around the peak, such as the verses. And then we can get ourselves to a peak scene. We can break it down. And then we've got a bridge variation. So I kind of have a good feeling that the idea is preserved in there. We've got things in the bank, we've got movement. We can go from here to here. Now we could, as I said, keep fleshing out more scenes, make intro, outro. You could come up with as many scenes and variations of these clips as you like, and then we could hit record. I've done that before in some previous streams in 2024, you can say last year now, with a MIDI controller and live performed it over. Or you know, this my trusty Novation. This is great. You can map this one up here and make that a live performance of these clips and scenes and record it over. But I think for now, today, we're just going to do a copy and paste type arrangement. We're going to get these 4 scenes over, and then we're going to sort of place them in different sections. So let's do that now, and we can kind of, you know, there's still material over here that we could use as well. Track 13 is just a placeholder. So let's now copy these clips over. So we're going to shift and select and highlight all of those. Adrian Dantas, thanks for the series. No problem at all, my friend. Like many new producers, I'm still stuck in the loop phase, and I've not yet learned how to arrange my ideas into songs, believe it or not. But I think that you are one of the few teachers I've seen that uses the session view to draft your scenes. A lot of people ignore session view and do everything in the arrangement. Yes, and you know, having taught Ableton Live for a long time, to ignore the session view and only work in the arrangement view, I think is a really, it's my opinion, but it's shared by a lot of people, including schools that I've worked with, such as Point Blank. I was working with them, I still do work with them for many years, and they absolutely, you know, teach with a session view workflow first, because there are occasions where we'll start a track over in the arrangement view, especially if I've got a long recording, or I'm recording a guitar and tracking it into here, or a vocal, or perhaps you've got an a cappella as the start of your track and you want to chop it up. Then there are times when you might go straight to this view and start working. But I think for many ideas, the best place to sketch out those ideas is in here. It's a creative space. We can trigger, we can make all these scenes, we can get things flowing nicely. And then we've got now a view to move to that separates the stages of making a track. So if you're over here working from day one, that then means that from day one, you are only in this view, and you're doing all your creative, all your composing, all your recording, all your arranging, all your mixing, all your mastering in the same view. By using the 2 views of Ableton, we're kind of separating our tasks. We've done composition, creativity, building out our idea here in the session view. We've made some scenes, so we're sort of dipping our toes into arranging and structuring, and we can do lots of fun jamming in here. So for example, you know, you can have your peak scene where you can stop all the clips in your track, and you can go over and push the bass, and then you can go and jam that with chord MIDI clip 3, and then you could go and jam that with the arpeggio. And if you like those 3 things combined there, and let's say maybe a hi-hat, we can then come over to the scenes here in the session view, right click there and say capture and insert, and Ableton will build us a scene of that. So there's a lots of amazing tools here that you can use. As I said, I'm just kind of using it one way today, of which there are many. And I'm actually going to copy these clips and paste them in the arrangement. But as I've shown on other videos before, we can also record them into the arrangement. We can live perform them into the arrangement with a MIDI controller and properly DJ and perform the tracks. So there's the best thing about Ableton is it gives us all these options of how we can sketch out our ideas and how we can turn them into arrangements. And if you're a performer, you can perform it. If you're a copy and paste person, you can copy and paste. You can make your own choices. You've got lots of ways, or a hybrid between the 2. This is a bit of a hybrid, what I've done here. I've taken the time to make a bit of a structure here, but I haven't flushed it out to a full structure. But sometimes I'll do that as well, and then record it over a complete song here, structured out. This is a bit of a hybrid. It's between the creativity of the session view and then we're going to move it over. Also, if you learn the session view in Ableton Live, you're looking at a live performance window here to how you could perform your songs and tracks live in a club, right? We can have this kick drum over here on scene 1, and we can go and have another kick drum lower down here, completely different sound, that we then trigger in another scene from another track, and use the bass line from that track with the bass line of this track, and happy days and all that fun stuff starts happening. So actually, if you'd like to see that, let me know. We can prepare up a bit of a mini live set and do a journey through that at some point. All right, so enough of me ranting and rambling, but I hope that's helpful, Adrian. You sort of got me going there with how that kind of works. So we're going to shift select all these clips, drag that over to the icon over here into the arrangement view, and then come on down, and we're going to drop these somewhere kind of deepish into the track. We could maybe say 3-minute mark there. So I'm looking down the bottom here at the time, and I'm popping those down on the timeline at that moment in time. And then what we can do is bring our back to arrangement button on here so we can see everything nice and clear. And we kind of know that this section here, what we can also do is let's just kind of click the height button so we sort of make it a bit easier to see what we've got. We kind of know that these are split into a few different sections, right? So we could also, let's maybe undo that. And let's do these one at a time. So let's say we take the verses over, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to bring the verses earlier on in time. They're going to start at around bar 17 here. All those clips that I've made as the verse clips, they're going to sit nicely here. And if you like, we can zoom in here and we can see, for example, that, let me just click there, that we've got 8 bars here, right? So if I loop that up, I can actually get all of these clips, and let's just bring them into that 8-bar section there, right? So that's 8 bars of the initial verses, right? And now we can jump over, go and grab ourselves the peak, and that one's going to go, just watch where you drop it, that one's going to go much deeper into the track, right? So now we're going to know that we're going to connect those two at some point. And so similarly, we can come over here and we can again see our 8 bars, pop that together like so. So we've now got a over here. And what we can also do is click on the left-hand side here of the grid where that starts, and we can add ourselves a marker. So we've just added this marker here, and we do the same over here. And we can write on those markers, if we wish, even a name. So we can put peak. And this one can have a name of verse or verses. So this actually, again, is going to be also kind of in between, let's say there. And this section here is going to have a bit of a variation on that for sure, but it is going to be a verse. Typically it would be verse 2 or section 2, you know, depending on the language you're going to use to arrange and structure your songs, but it's going to be a variation of this. And this one over here, I would typically be calling verse 1, and those will be differing from each other. If you've got a vocal in your track, it's very, in typical traditional songwriting, verse 1 is a different vocal to what you have in verse 2, and then in the chorus or peak. So now we're going to go back and grab ourselves our break scene. And that's going to come, takes a little practice to do that bit. It's going to come pretty close to after the peak, but we'll probably have the peak at least for 16 bars or so, maybe a bit longer. So the peak, you know, this is rough at the moment. These markers and where I've dropped them isn't 100% for sure they're going to end up staying there, but more or less it's not a bad place to start with. So we might move this all the way over to, say, 4 minutes as a rough idea. This to me is likely to be my chorus or break or the build. This is the build, is another way to describe the peak. And this then becomes the drop or the chorus or the break, the main break, let's say. So we might even make that 16 bars. And if we're using languages such as breaks, then this would be the main break of the track. And again, I'm just placing these. Please, if you're watching this, these are not, don't look at the time and say 100% that is where it needs to be. Not at all. They're just spreading it out. We do need to connect these things together at some point, but they may well move around, and an interesting song structure might not have the main break here. It might be all the way over here. So that's sort of, the beauty then of arranging a song. There is not a rule book we can throw at it. So don't look at anything here and say every time I do that I need to put it at 4 minutes or something like that. And that's another reason actually for understanding these two views, is that when we work in the session view of Ableton Live, we're not aware really of the time domain. We're aware of I don't want to go, it would take me a bit more time to explain it all, but let's just say there is some synchronizing of clips and some control over. Essentially, it's almost like a DJ is working in this view, because the clips, when we trigger something and we trigger another clip, Ableton's helping us sync those together so that they change at the same time. But we're not looking at 1 minute and 2 minutes and 3 minutes and 4 minutes. We're in a very creative space here without thinking, oh, my track needs to be 6 minutes long and the peak needs to be 8 bars long or 16 bars. I'm not really tied to that here. I could hit the peak and I can go now and it's still playing at Christmas, because it will just keep playing here unless I change something, right? So when it's for me really important to make a note of that. Whereas down here, as soon as we start working the arrangement view, we're aware of, oh, that's 0 seconds, oh, that's 1 minute's time, that's 2 minutes. And if we hit stop and push play, we're now cycling through what would be the timeline of a song. Over here, we're not doing that. We are thinking about that will be the future, but it's not something we're tied to when we're here. So I hope that helps. All right, let's get the bridge over. So maybe a bit, doesn't need to be 16 bars, but again, doesn't need to be. Maybe our bridge is, who knows? That's something we're going to find out. And the good thing with arranging, that's the thing that essentially, actually, when you are structuring and arranging your song, the more feeling you can put into this, the more sort of like perhaps not copying and pasting and recording live and performing everything then. And of course, the more decisions that happen by feeling rather than calculated decisions and numbers and bar counts and, looking at the timeline down the bottom there. So I'm kind of aware that I probably want this song roughly to be about 6.5 minutes long or so for my DJ sets or club tracks, to 7 minutes. So that sort of length of time there is roughly how long my track probably is going to end up. But again, I'm doing that from many, many years of arranging tracks and DJing electronic music, techno, house, deep house, all of that. There is a sort of song track length. But as a DJ track, again, and a club track and an arrangement, we're going to think differently to how we'd be doing if it was a pop or a radio track, which would be something like this instead, about here. And everything would be going off much, much earlier. Whereas if this is going to be a club and DJ track, then the arrangement's going to be reflective of that. It's going to be very minimal in the intro and more minimal in the outro, allowing a DJ to mix their songs in and out of the beginning and ending. So now that we've got this, the minimum thing it tells us is we've got our 4 scenes that I built over here across. We've got bunches of clips down here we haven't used. We might go back and check some of these out, particularly, the originals. We can always pick from them anything in the future. We've got an interesting bass I haven't used down there. I'll do a bit of housekeeping at some point for sure, because obviously it can get confusing. In fact, that bass clip could already go because that's the legato bass, or I'll put it down here and I'll just put legato something so that I know it's different. And just go through this at some point and see am I not using something I should be using that's down here. And anywhere there's original, it's material we can come back and pick from and generate something else from it, which is really cool. So there's spare sequences, spare chord progressions we haven't used, and I think this is a double up of the ARP recording. Yes, so that can go. My good old friend the ARP that crashed the software twice today. Yeah, I don't know what was going on there. Anyway, so we got spares in the bank here. This is all still in the session view, right? So anytime you're working over here, you can go back over, take a look in there, copy a clip over from it. It's not going to disappear. Not in my workflow, that is. All right, so let's do another save. And now what we would start to do is, as I said, be aware that we are going to want to connect at some point all of these sections up together. And the fact that we had, one of these is extra, right? The verse 2, because it's a duplicate of verse 1, but it's not going to end up staying like that. But the rest of it, we've given ourselves a bit of a head start, right? We've given ourselves, okay, so we're going to end up wanting to build ourselves up to this, wherever this peak ends up being in the end decided. We're going to build ourselves up to that, and then we're going to drop into this break, and the bridge is going to pop up in its little space towards the outro, where it's going to refresh our ears a bit from everything we're very familiar with over here, because by the time we get towards this section here, we're going to be pretty familiar with those parts. That's why I love bridges in my tracks. And right now we've got the ARP that gets thrown in the mix. We've got we did have a different sequence as well, but in the end I changed my mind on that. So we've got some different variation in there that makes it a little bit different to the other tracks. Also, this clap track actually needs to be copied over. It's going to be in the game pretty much, probably right across the track. Let's see. So now what I would do now is get set up. It's perfectly set up, ready to start arranging in next Sunday's live stream. And what we will be doing, or what I would be doing, is just literally picking up exactly from here. And now we're going to build all the pieces that are going to connect these sections to each other. And we're going to make some little edits and tweaks and things as we go. And we're going to build the feeling, the tension, the release between all of these different parts, right? So I think that's probably a good place to kind of wrap things up. Just to remind ourselves what we're working with, we'll do a quick listen in the session view again. And these are the different scenes. So the verse scene we have. Let's make sure we copy the clap across here actually as well. Let's jump to the peak. And ladies and gents, there's automation to happen. There's lots of fun stuff, some edits, I've already just thought to myself straight away, and by the way, it's all grayed out in here because I've been back in the session view playing. That's what Ableton will do. It will say, hey Heath, you've been playing in the session view, the clip's over there. So if you want to work in here, we now have to click the back to arrangement button. And now we're sort of saying, well, we're going to be playing our clips in here. And so the session view is kind of the grayed out element, so to speak. So while I was doing that, I already thought to myself straight away, well, this break scene, I also want a kind of copy of it, similarly to what I did with the verse. I duplicated that. I actually want a copy of this as well, over here somewhere. Not sure where again, but it would be a variation of that somewhere in here. And again, it's not fixed that it's going to be in that position there, but it typically will be before we jump from verse 1 to verse 2. But whether it's at 1 minute 30 seconds in here or it's over here, time will tell. But I'd also like perhaps another break somewhere earlier or in here somewhere. It could even again actually be over here. So we will determine that once we start to lay things out a bit, but we'll just label that another break. I'll go more deeper into it when we're actually arranging the track, but again, breakdowns, don't put them in your song and in your structure arrangement unless they're needed. They're there to build tension and release. They're there to break things down and then you build things back up. That's the story that we're going to tell with what you were just listening to. So a lot of people add breaks, unnecessary breaks. There's no need for them. They don't feel right. They stop you if you're on the dance floor or moving and you go, well, what happened there? Because someone put in a break and it's not really necessary. You don't need any breaks here at all if you don't want. There's plenty of tracks that do that. Okay, so back over here. And if I was playing around with thinking about automation, I'm going to just jump to the sequence of the analog here. So yeah, there's lots of fun stuff to develop in this track. Also, all the individual sounds at this point in time are very, very raw, basic sounds. There's a little bit of EQ, a little bit of the odd reverb here or there, a little bit of erosion on some of these drum sounds, but we could also sound design these sounds a little bit more. Typically, if I'm working on this in my own time and I'm not on YouTube, I'm going to spend a bit of time making all those sounds absolutely kind of, you know, hit and give the impact that I'm looking for. I think the idea kind of works together quite nicely, but it can be also improved and all the little individual sounds get a lot the care and attention that they need to make them sound the best they can. We can do a bit of that in the mixing, but I'd also generally work on that as I go, which I did do in the first stream. All of the sounds that you're hearing in this track, apart from some of the drum samples that I've added, all of the synth sounds, they're all made from scratch, all the patches, all the sounds. There's no presets going on here. So if you want to see, perhaps learn how all the sounds are built, the vocal as well, that was recorded from scratch, the percussion track, all of that came together in part 1. So on that note, I'm going to wish you an amazing rest of your Sunday. I will drop a link to a card here. And in this case, it will be, for those of you who haven't seen part 1, I'll put a link at the end card here. So go and check out part 1 and make sure you're kind of following the journey of how we got to here. I hope you've enjoyed part 2. We're very, very well set up for part 3, which is going to be getting stuck in here and getting the story of all these parts working together, the tension release, and some automation into it, and yeah, polish up the sounds, edit them, and carry on with that. So I hope you will join me for part 3. Thanks to those of you who joined me for part 2 today. It's been good to have you in the chat. Chavi Diaz, as always, a big, big thank you to you for helping, letting me know, as did a couple of others, I think, here and there when the crashes happened, that the audio had been restored. And unfortunately, I've become good at fixing that now. But first time it's happened in a while. Not sure what happened, but thanks for sticking around if you were there when things crashed. On that note, as I said, I'm rambling now. Take care. Have an amazing rest of your Sunday. See you all in part 3. Until then, keep on creating, and ciao for now. Goodbye.